Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order this Pierce County Council meeting in our Tuesday study session. It is Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. The time is 12:09 p.m. Apologies to those who have been waiting in the Zoom room for us to begin. All members are present, except for Councilmember Morrell, who I know will be here very shortly. Item 2 is review of today's council meeting agenda. Ms. Long, we briefed yesterday on the agenda as usual, so I will ask you to go through the items that are changed as of yesterday, please.
Thank you. So, right, there's a lot on the consent, and I believe you haven't briefed on all of that. I'm not aware of new items on your consent agenda. You will see the addition under section 6. Messages from the executive that includes the veto message on 2023-36 that has been added to your agenda. Under section 7 proclamations, you do have one this afternoon that is proclaiming Saturday, October 14th as Puget Sound Orca Recovery Day in Pierce County, and that was requested by Chair Mello. And then under section 8, you do have one ordinance for consideration. That's 2023-39. And this is making a variety of amendments to Title 3, which is the county's personnel code. This received a due pass at rules on September 25th. There are amendments to that. And I know that you've been briefed on 1, which is the technical amendment, and then 2, 4, and 5. And I believe Councilmember Krueger might speak to an amendment number 3 and a 6 for you. And apologies for not having them into the packets, but we can talk about them. And I think you might have hard copies of number 3. I think that's to share if they're not wet.
With coffee.
They're not too soggy.
Councilmember Krueger to discuss amendments on 2023-39, the personnel policy amendments.
Thank you, Chair. Are you asking on number, are we just going through like number 2 was the one we did yesterday, and that was just regarding the additional time for bereavement.
That has not changed since yesterday.
Correct.
We did, as a reminder, Ms. Long, we did ask Director Archer to review that amendment to make sure she could fully implement it as with understanding what the legislative intent is. I have not heard back from Director Archer, so assuming that the department doesn't have any other feedback, we want to make sure that if we adopt the amendment, I intend to support it. If we adopt the amendment, that that the department can fully implement it as intended. So just want to make sure you were aware of that.
Correct. And I do see where she had left a voicemail that I have not picked up. So I plan to talk with her later to answer questions or go over things. Then amendment number 3 is
Councilmember Krueger, do you mind moving your, thank you.
This one is in reference to the chapter 3.18 with policy responsibilities and non-compliance. And when I looked through all of this information, which I've written.
Do we have a copy of the amendment you're looking at?
Do you have hard copies, Councilmember Krueger?
What I have is one that I got from Patty last night about 6 p.m. And we are adding in number 6 that Patty had them last night. So I don't know what has been done, but I'm going to go on to number 4 while he works on that. Number 4 is just specifically to replace the gender neutral language back to its original proper grammar. Number 5 is the one that is defining what diversity, equity, inclusion, those words mean. And that was one that I have wordsmithed them to mean more generic terminology where it is not as demanding of the employee. Yet the spirit of what is read, you can still apply some of the desires of the administration. First one is that at diversity, the simple statement is inclusive. The EEOC is already in section 3.16. That is part that is taken out in the word diversity. For equity, it has been simplified to be not quite so powerful in its meaning of the words that are used. When I read that, I think we're trying to create activist employees. Inclusion has so many different terminologies around the system that the way that it has been worded here, values individual, it is putting a burden, I believe, on our employees to be able to perform what is being asked there. So that was my purpose on number 5. Number 6 that is being worked on is adding in the right of conscience. That, I don't know, if the Pierce County values the individuality and differences of its employees and will not require participation in work-related activities and trainings that employees consider to be offensive or contrary to their conscience, personal values, or beliefs. So in a sense, that is reiterating state law in the same way that 3.16 has been reiterated like 3 times in the program.
So now we're just waiting for Amendment 3's language.
Correct.
Are you able to speak to it philosophically? And maybe the
Number
the
3,
intent? Yeah.
probably. So that policy, as I read through that over and over, it has a lot of instructional materials, I guess I want to say, in what it is asking the employees to do and be and think. And I don't think we have the authority, that's my position, is we don't have the authority to require a request and judge our employees on all of this language. And so I condensed that into a more simplistic terms that we are dedicated to being professional. We do respect our employees and we want them to flourish. That's not quite all the wording, but that's basically what this is covering. And the responsibilities of human resources is, having programs available so they can have the opportunities and develop policies and develop and review new information to assist in the endeavor. And that's the basics of what that amendment is.
Thank you. And I think it's being printed for us as we speak. So we'll look for the language here, hopefully while we're still here in study session, and can come back to this item if council wants to. Vice Chair Campbell.
Sorry, I was reading through an email I just received about the executive's actions. Councilmember Kerber, earlier you said the amendment, was it 2 that returns to proper language?
Now,
it's
2
4.
is the time
Oh.
for bereavement. 3 is the policy. 4, I believe, is yes, 4 is the gender neutral terms, where they switched he, she to be they, them. That's
Oh,
that's it.
Okay, well, I think it'd just be they.
Pardon?
If you, in the context of the sentences, it would shift from he/she to they.
/ them.
I'll reread that, but it should be. All right, I'll reread that, but you said return to proper English.
Just to what it was before the change.
Okay, you used the term proper English, and so I was curious as to the
Proper
source.
grammar.
Proper grammar, thank you. Is that AP style? What do we
AP
use?
style wasn't around when I was in high school. It's real hard for me to do. That's the one with the single space after a period. That's what I learned for AP. What are you?
AP would have been 2 spaces until recently they changed it
Yeah.
because grammar changes, but
Yeah.
AP style has been around since 1800s.
AP style. Not familiar.
That's the grammar style guide for all
Here's, I think they're going to be passed out so folks can put eyes on them and try to understand them maybe before we leave our study session. Are there any questions about the amended agenda for today's meeting? I don't see any.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. We're
Sorry,
having two
sorry.
conversations.
It's
here.
all good.
Sorry.
I wasn't asking, I was asking my colleagues if there was any other questions about today's agenda, and there doesn't seem to be any. Thank
We
you.
are scrambling to get these amendments organized real quick for the council.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna, Mr. Taylor, if I move to external boards and commissions, will I call on you or will I call on Mr. Swanson?
All right, ready to go, Mr. Chair. All right, thank you. So let me pull up the agenda for the Transportation Policy Board meeting of the Puget Sound Regional Council. That's the only meeting that's happening this week at the PSRC. That meeting's this Thursday, October the 12th. Of course, Mr. Chair, you represent the council on that board. Last week, I gave you a snapshot of the agenda items that were anticipated. The board has since published their formal agenda. The items haven't changed from last week. Just to reiterate, there is one action item that's on the agenda of note that's of importance, I believe, to the county, and that is the board making a recommendation for approval of projects that are on the Rural Town Center and Corridors program list, as well as the Transportation Alternatives Program funding. That is important to Pierce County as there are two projects that are recommended for funding that benefit the unincorporated area. These are projects that would be funded under the Transportation Alternatives Program. The first is B Street. This is a Safe Routes to School project. The county will receive $544,000 of funding if that is approved ultimately by the executive board. I'll note that that project is included within your Transportation Improvement Program draft. That's before you for consideration as part of the biennial budget approval process. The project's also in your Safe Routes to School plan, so I know it's a priority for the county. The second project that also is proposed to receive funding from the Transportation Alternatives Program is 138th Street East. This is from State Route 7 to Park. $524,000 of funding that's proposed. This project would bring a number of pedestrian and bicycle improvements, again, linked to that Pacific Avenue corridor. So that's an important project as well. Lastly, I'll note a contingency project that I know is important to District 7. This is under the Rural Town Centers and Corridors project. This project is the first on the contingency list. This is the Jackson Lackey improvement project that I know is of interest to Councilmember Denson and her constituents. It is the first on the contingency priority list with $1.5 million of funding. And so the way the contingency prioritization works is if projects that are scored, that score above the line for contingency, above the contingency line do not advance, they move down, the PSRC has the opportunity to move down the list to the projects on the contingency list in the order that they're presented. So it's in first position on the contingency currently. Those are the only action items that are at the Transportation Policy Board this week. There's a number of discussion items that I highlighted last week. I'll quickly just touch on those. The first is making recommendations to the 2024 state legislature. This is legislative priorities. Second is discussion on the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. And third is the discussion regarding the 2024 project selection process. Again, something that's of an interest to Pierce County. So that's what I have for PSRC this week, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The climate pollution reduction grant program for our 4-county region led by PSRC and the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency is a really big deal. This is through this planning exercise is how the region will receive tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars from the Inflation Reduction Act, the Federal Inflation Reduction Act. So this planning exercise paves the way for all kinds of energy rebates and energy upgrades for commercial and residential buildings and electric vehicle infrastructure and other electrification of all kinds. The plan that's being written by the Clean Air Agency and PSRC is what sets the stage for local government to get in line to receive these dollars from the federal government, again, through the Inflation Reduction Act. So it's a really big deal. It's a necessary step to position us to receive those dollars. That again will help people save money and lead cleaner, healthier lives and all that. So it's a really big deal. Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Taylor, I may be thinking of a different grant that PSRC or maybe PCRC, I get them confused. We're considering, but I thought that the Jackson Lackey Key-Pen Highway Roundabout was one of two projects that had qualified and were being moved forward. Is this a different grant program? Because now we're one of three and we've been dropped down to a contingency, not a funded project. Not to be ungrateful, I'm happy to be on the contingency
I
list.
understand. So the action that's before the Transportation Policy Board includes the approval of funding for 6 projects under the Rural Town Centers and Corridors Program. The Lackey Road, Jackson Lake Road, Key Peninsula Highway project, which is the roundabout project that you're referring to. It's actually number 7 on the list at below the funding line. There's a second project as well that's on the contingency list, which is a Snohomish County project, the Second and Pine roundabout. Both of those are on the contingency list though. So I can certainly do some follow-up to see if I may be missing some additional information regarding funding availability for these contingency projects, but that would be the normal order of things or course of action at PSRC. The projects that are above the funding line would be funded subject to executive board approval. Those that are below the line that are in the contingency list would be funded if funding becomes available in the future.
Okay, I may just have misunderstood when we were talking about the 2 projects. I didn't hear the contingency part. All right, thank you.
Thank you. There's other, so Mr. Taylor briefed on the projects for unincorporated Pierce County, a couple of really important projects to us. And then there's some other projects that some of our cities are receiving through the action on the agenda. So some good things for Pierce County on Thursday's agenda there at PSRC. Mr. Taylor, anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you. Do other members have any updates on boards and commissions you represent Pierce County on? Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to flag, WASAC has started working on their federal issues package that we use when we attend our federal policy work sessions, and then as a group kind of advocating. So a couple things, I've added broadband, trying as per our conversation during EIDC. So I'll work on that. But if there are specific things that you are interested in or think that need to be there, and I'm not sure who has seen the one from last year, I can send that back out. It's long. When we say that we have too many priorities, WASAC did a stellar job of getting our entire state's federal policies into a multi-page document. So, but if there's something in there that you think, things that have come up that have been flagged as not being present that we want to work on, was around the regulations around how you get permission to be a medically assisted treatment or MOUD, like you can actually give out the medications, are really cumbersome. And when we're trying to get it further out into our rural parts, they're saying this is a problem. So that's come up. Testing supplies for fentanyl, making sure that we are looking at how the rules around the funding that comes into the state for veteran services and regarding to transportation, because there's been some changes. And so there's like limitations on being able to use the dollars. So I was going to check with you, Councilmember Herrera, if you were aware. PFAS came up and triggered a pretty significant conversation, and senior housing and the Older Americans Act and some of the concerns around the fact that we have a a baby boomer population that is aging out. We have a workforce shortage to do the work to build and kind of support that age group. And how do we do that? And then I'm going to use the acronyms, the WIA and the WIOA programs took cuts this year in our federal. And so just out lobbying and asking that this comes back because it's so big as far as building the next workforce and helping those who are out of work find work. So making sure that we're working on that. So if there's something else that you are aware of, I'm happy to help kind of put that into and advocate on behalf of Pierce County to our state association so that it ends up as part of that document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hitchin. Councilor Denson.
Thank you, Chair. So I attended the Large Urban County Conference, Large Urban County Caucus Conference, luck, last week. And so I just wanted to give a couple highlights for me, I got out of the conference. First thing, I found out that Pierce County is really a superstar in the world of juvenile justice. And I had no idea. I mean, I knew we were great, but we are renowned throughout the country. Annie E. Casey Foundation was there presenting, and she works very closely with Director Bull and his staff. They even send people out here to tour and send them other places. So I was pretty puffed up with pride from that, and very, very proud of our juvenile justice and all the work we're doing around probation and detention. There was a lot of talk about broadband. So one thing I learned was about the Affordable Connectivity Program. There's somebody there from the Department of Education that basically gives a stipend or a discount of up to $30 a month and $100 off any device to low-income families. There's about 21 million that people nationwide that have signed up, but 48 million that are eligible. So it's definitely something I will be working to get the word out, and I'd be happy to share information if you want to get that out to your communities as well. We had someone from the Department of Treasury talking about ARPA and explaining the 2023 interim final rule, which provides 3 new eligible uses for ARPA funding. Those include emergency relief for natural disasters that either have recently occurred or that we anticipate in the near future. So that's something to keep in mind. Surface transportation projects was the second, and third were what's called Title I projects, which is anything eligible for HUD CDBG money. And there's a lot of things that are eligible for CDBG dollars. So I don't think we're having any trouble finding places to put our ARPA money. But if we had any and we wanted to allocate those, then that is an option. I also had further conversations with the FCC. I talked a little bit about this at EDIC. That was a great connection. Some people from Comcast too, and I think some of those relationships forged will be helpful for Pierce County. So appreciate the opportunity to attend. Came back with lots of follow-up work to do. Thank you.
Thank you for representing us. Other members have updates on boards and commissions they represent Pierce County on. I'll update briefly. Councilmember Campbell and I attended the Pierce Transit Board meeting last evening. I think just 2 things of note for the council. One is we approved a contract for a new provider to do the on-demand microtransit that we got briefed on a couple of times, most recently at Councilmember Hitchin's in-district meeting in DuPont. This is the runner service that serves JBLM and lots of different areas, Spanaway, the Tide Flats, Ruston, several different areas. So a new provider, which should provide even better service for the runner service, this microtransit on-demand runner service, bus Uber is how I explain it in the community. So new company coming online and should be better, higher quality service with metrics like 50, you get a ride within 15 minutes. When you call, you get a ride within 15 minutes. So some improved performance measures and outcomes like that. If you continue to be interested in the runner service, that there is a webpage at Pierce County. It is new, so people are still wrapping their brain around how this works. We've gotten a couple of presentations about it here at council. So new contractor called Via Transportation for the runner on-demand microtransit services. They're starting in Puyallup, Spanaway, Tide Flats, and Ruston areas to begin with, and then they'll go to the other areas like JBLM and some of the other areas, but starting in this new service with this new contractor in Puyallup, Spanaway, Tide Flats, and Ruston. The other item to update folks on is we approved a contract to do an overhaul of all of the bus shelters. Not sure if you notice in your neck of the woods, but the bus shelters are not in great shape. Broken windows regularly, graffiti, hard to keep clean and safe and attractive. So the board has really asked the CEO to really take a look at this. And, these bus shelters are in our built environment. They don't often look great in our business districts, in our neighborhoods. They're not functioning to keep people dry and comfortable. So there's a big effort to, over the next 6 years, to replace every single bus shelter and put more bus shelters where they don't exist. So we approved a contract to begin work. It's going to take 6 years to change out all of them with a new design that should be less maintenance. The way that they've designed it, it's less maintenance. If glass gets broken or graffiti happens, so should be less expensive to maintain, should be more attractive and user-friendly for users. The agency was also directed to use the Pierce County Equity Index to make decisions about how to go about over the next 6 years, where to start. So they're using the Equity Index about where to start. So what does that mean? That means starting in parts of the service territory that have more seniors, more low-income people who are transit dependent, and more communities of color that are transit dependent. So seniors, low-income folks, and people of color, starting in where our equity index says there's higher densities of those populations, and starting to do bus shelter replacement using the equity index in that way. And by year 6, there should be a full replacement of all the shelters, and some additional shelters coming online where there aren't some today. So that's a big initiative which should improve user comfort and safety here with improvements starting just next year. So I think that's the update from Pierce Transit. Okay, I want to come back now that we have the amendments in front of us. Many of us are visual learners, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but now that we have this in front of us, I want to make sure we can read it. We have amendments 3 and 6, which we did not review yesterday. Ms. Long, we know you're doing a lot and we're out ill yesterday. I'm looking at amendment 3. I believe there's just a typo, right? It says diversion, equity, and inclusion towards the top of
Yes,
this.
thank you.
Nice catch.
Yes, we'll definitely correct that.
Like divert our employees.
Speaking of juvenile court, right?
Okay, so this amendment changes the policy language and the responsibilities. I think, again, many of us are reading this for the first time in real time. Councilmember Krueger.
I'll just comment. I wouldn't say it changes it, it just condenses it.
Okay, and then amendment 6.
Six is clarifying the rights of employees.
Mr. Chair, that section would be added to 010, which is the policy section of the new DEI chapter. So, for example, if amendment number 3 failed, number 6 would simply add this language related to employees' right of conscience to the new proposed language for the policy of the DEI program.
Thank you for
That
explaining that
helps.
to us. Councilmember Krueger, anything further?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Just wanted to come back to what Vice Chair Campbell began to discuss, but I am going to tried to make sure that folks can finish their thoughts before we call on someone else, because again, it's hard to hear in Zoom, but I think Vice Chair Campbell was starting to make my opinion, a very important point. Not only about I don't necessarily want to debate this all now, but study session is a time for us to make sure we understand what we're voting on. Vice Chair Campbell was beginning to discuss updates to AP style language, which gets updated and modernized routinely. Vice Chair Campbell, can I just ask you to finish your thought there?
So I was looking at Amendment 4, where we back out the theys or theirs. Some people confusing this, what it is and what it isn't, as I'm looking at this a little bit more. Some people have aversions to seeing people's pronouns listed out there, okay? And if this was about expanding the pronouns that people use, the change here would be to change it from he, him, or her, she, or they, them, deem necessary. I'm reading one off of here. It's not what's happening here. What's happening is, per AP style guide, right now, I'm reading the first one under enforcement procedures. Hearing officer shall conduct investigation of the allegations contained therein as he or she deems necessary. And so it's in that kind of legalese of he or she. And they're just putting the word there. Because in regular parlance, as we all speak, we would actually say that out loud as hearing officer shall conduct an investigation to the allegations contained therein as they deem necessary. You use they or them as a singular pronoun, which is perfectly acceptable per Webster's dictionary, when the gender is unimportant or not necessarily to be known. It is not needed to be known, the gender of the hearing officer in this case, which is where AP style and Webster's dictionary would both agree the term there, or they in this case, would be the appropriate use of proper grammar in this sentence. So it's not about pronoun acknowledgements of he, him, she, her, they, them, or however else someone wants to define. That is totally what is not happening in this document. What is happening is the modernization that we see across, and you can go into many codes where they're being opened up, where many years ago, it probably just said he. And someone said, you know, it just says he. And right now our hearing examiner's woman, let's change them all to he, she. And seemed good that he or she, but that's where you start to get into that legalese where it doesn't flow smoothly, because I never hear anyone talking. Just yesterday, we were talking about in later, and we said, well, employees, when they want to apply for this, they do that. Those are singular uses of the word they. We didn't use when employees want to apply for this. They, he, she should apply under he, she. We don't use that in regular language. We use they very comfortably. And so I understand where some of this is rooted in, and based really upon the emails I've been getting, is totally what's not happening here. It is an entirely different, may have similar words, but that's 3 and 4 is not 7. So I think there's been a deep confusion.
There's been deep confusion and deep disinformation that is causing lots of whipping up of folks, which is very concerning. Thank you for explaining that, Councilmember Campbell. Politicizing a personnel procedure like this, of what it's not, it's not what these emails are saying. No one's forcing anyone to change their pronouns to they or them. I use he, him, and his. Others use the pronouns of their choice. That's not what is happening in this personnel change, as Vice Chair Campbell indicates. Yet people we're getting dozens of emails communicating that that's what this is choosing to do, and it is not what is happening here. And politicizing this is very unfortunate. Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's very interesting to bring up the revisions of the language, but we're dealing with a lot of baby boomers in this country. And I was perfectly fine in the days when he was used as the normal, didn't bother me, I've got bigger fish to fry. Going through this in this change has spent a lot of time for something that wasn't necessary, that people still find offensive. We have basics that have been the way they are for years. Doesn't mean we can't modify things, but this is something that has been used throughout this country for several years and causing a lot of animosity in the pronouns, the identities, all the differences. It's very difficult to communicate. And there is no reason to change this and spend the time on it this time. And I'll have words later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I also encourage us to remember that not everybody uses language from 40 years ago, and people identify differently. And it's seriously dehumanizing to quite a number of people who maybe identify differently than how you might. So I ask us to remain inclusive and thoughtful about how our words and actions affect others, even if we can't understand them or can't relate to them. I ask us to stay sensitive and inclusive to how our words and actions in this kind of debate might significantly harm a good amount of our population, even if you might not know them. We're going to move on to item 4, Chair's topics. We are going to take a council photo right after this, so we have a photo to use for appropriate purposes of the entire council. Thank you, members, for making yourselves available for that. One of the first places we'll use this photo is the council is being recognized by the Tacoma Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium, receiving an award this Thursday evening at the Affordable Housing Consortium's annual event for the council's work adopting the Maureen Howard Affordable Housing Act and other major initiatives this council has worked on together to really meaningfully advance the preservation and development of new affordable housing. So congratulations to the council for earning that award. And we look forward to accepting it on behalf of the council this Thursday evening and celebrating that. We're at item 5, other business. We have a proclamation review. There are 2 proclamations at the end of the study session agenda. One is Community Conflict Resolution Day, being brought forward by Vice Chair Campbell and myself, and also a proclamation honoring the very dedicated Greg McClellan from our very own Pierce County Television. And that is being brought forward by Councilmember Hitchen, again, both at the end of your study session agenda. So if you have comments, please suggest those to members. Is there any other business by council members in study session today? Not seeing any. Ms. Long, is there any other business for council?
Not today, just a reminder that there is the October birthday celebration coming up right after this.
We'll be celebrating October birthdays in the Tahoma room at the conclusion of this and the conclusion of our council photo. Seeing no other business before the Pierce County. We're photoing right here.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for being clear. But unless we're told otherwise by Mr. Dominic or Mr. Weinsberry, we were photoing here in chambers. Seeing no other business before the council on Tuesday study session, we are adjourned.